Recording in
it
progress.
hasn't been published yet. So early July, I believe, is when we can expect to see that. It's going to be published as a commentary. They had me cut down the words. I ended up cutting, I don't know, like 30, 40 words. She also asked for a bio, even though it was a planning commission document. So they have a bio for me on there. So that's happening. They were agreeable to future commentaries in a similar way, because we had talked about doing the solar shading and density discussions the same way. So they're ready to agree to that. The editor's name is Cassandra, so she was agreeable. So I'll use that as a segue to say that I think we probably should get started soon on drafting a solar shading article. So if John or Jeff or anyone else that has like notes about the solar shading issue wants to send those along to me, I can draft something in the next few weeks, hopefully, and then share that with the group just so we have that ready to go. Because we are going to probably crank up how much activity we're doing on the city plan pretty soon. So let's go ahead and just get ahead on that while we're not too busy. Another thing I think I'd like to try to get a head start on is we had talked about doing an optional arts and culture chapter. So I might take a stab at that and circulate it with the existing city committees that we have. And when I say take a stab at it, just take a stab at some of the like aspirations and goals and things. And if that sounds okay with you, Mike, like would that help take anything off your plate if I put in a little bit of preliminary work on that?
Got the fire trucks going by. I mean, yeah, if you certainly you're welcome to go ahead and do that. Don't know if it makes less work. It'll eventually get there. But yeah, there is an arts committee, public art committee. And then you could touch base with Josh Jerome. He works, he replaced Kevin Casey here in the office. So he would be one of the staff people to contact on that.
What's his position?
He's the community and economic development specialist.
Okay. Yeah, and I'll definitely be involving the Public Arts Commission, which they seem to, I'm not sure if I'm giving them credit for maybe things they aren't related to, but there's been a lot of public art that's gone up at the last couple of years in Montpelier. So assuming that was them, they've been busy. Seems good. Okay, so those are some things hoping to work on really soon. Those the solar shading article and the arts and culture chapter. A couple other things. I think we're going to start having a high school member named Noah, which is an existing thing. It's just been vacant. So there'll be a junior from Montpelier High School who joins our meeting sometimes and is involved in the discussion. And they won't vote, obviously. But that's going to be something that's going to be happening probably at our next meeting, so everyone knows. And in a similar vein, I'm wondering, Mike, if you know when Marcella's position is going to be posted.
I sent a notice to Mary. I actually had forgotten to let her know, so I sent her a note today, letting her know that Marcella isn't on the commission anymore. So we'll have to get another position posted. So if anybody knows anyone, it'll be position will be getting posted at some point soon.
Okay. And so what maybe a month from now, or when do you think the city council will?
The next council meeting is next week, so that obviously doesn't fit into anybody's schedule. But the meeting after that isn't for like another 5 weeks. I want to say it's like July 27th. So okay. If people are thinking, it'll probably get posted in that window of time. So if people think of something getting an application filled out by July 20th, would get somebody appointed on the 27th. Otherwise, it's not till mid-August.
Is it possible if we have someone between now and the next meeting apply, or does there need to be some kind of minimum posting period? And
I don't know. It certainly, if they fill out an application and get it to Mary by this Friday, it's something the council could certainly consider filling it in that way. But I don't know the official rules of getting it. If somebody just says, I heard there was a vacancy, I'd like to get appointed, maybe they'll appoint them right away.
Okay. That's helpful to know. Okay, so I think that's about it for comments. Does anyone have anything they want to share? Okay. Well, the next thing on the agenda is an election of a vice chair. Since we barely have a quorum, yeah, it's going to take a unanimous vote. So first off, I guess I would say, does anyone have a nomination in mind?
I'd like to nominate Mr. Gabriel Lejeunesse, the vice chair of the Planning Commission.
Very, very smooth. I will say this. I think before we're going to have this discussion, I guess maybe we should have talked about reordering the agenda, because I don't feel comfortable until we have the Central Vermont Planning Commission figured out.
Okay, well, we can do that. We can skip ahead to that discussion. It's on the agenda next, and then we'll revisit this. So we'll put a pause on that nomination and open up the next item, which is CVRPC. There's only 4 of us here, which makes that more difficult. But before, we had talked about Marcella being the main person for a while and Gabe filling in from time to time as an alternate. That plan is destroyed. If Gabe's going to take on any new responsibilities, or if anyone's going to take on new responsibilities, then we've got to take that into account when looking at the CVRPC. So first off, Jeff or John, do either of you have any interest in filling in some capacity to help with CVRPC?
I don't think I can, in good faith, commit to taking anything on.
And I'll have to ditto that. My available time is different than when I initially brought that up in the early spring.
Okay, that's fair. We still have Ariane and we have Aaron, and so we can figure something out. I think that it's slightly more important to make sure that the vice chair situation's taken care of. Gabe, have you been officially put into that position by the city council or anything, like the CVRPC stuff?
I think there was a nomination that had to go forward, and we need to have some representation. I don't mind continuing to act as as our representative until we figure things out. I just feel like, you look at your capacity, how many things can you take on? And the thing about the vice is that I'm going to be in these meetings anyway. So if it's just having someone who can, conduct the business when Kirby's out, and there certainly could be other things that a vice might take on, but I'm okay with that because I'm already going to be here. But to do that with whatever that may entail, if there's, some additional work that's needed to be done, and to be the only sole representative at the Central Vermont, I can't do it. It's just too much.
So for the vice position, I mean, the way it's been done in the past, like when I was the vice, it was this way, and the way that Aaron and Marcella, took on the position was, the vice has involvement in putting together the agenda for the week, which is usually a matter of just reviewing what Mike puts together and if anything springs to mind, you can comment. Otherwise, you can even be silent, and then Mike and I'll take care of it. That's the biggest thing, which is not much. And then whatever additional things you could take on or want to take on. So from there, it's flexible. And then the other part of that position is just to fill in and running the meetings if I'm out.
John, is the person that you're thinking about, would they be interested in serving on that Central Vermont Planning Commission as well?
It's possible. They'd certainly be qualified. But maybe getting ahead of ourselves, committing them to joining.
Right.
They haven't said that they'd be on board for joining the planning commission. So
one thing at a time, right?
Yeah.
Right. Well, Aaron's on. Aaron must have heard this was going on. He's ready to volunteer.
So Aaron, to let you know what's going on is we've got the vice chair position that's open. We also have the CVRPC stuff that's up in the air with Marcella's departure. John had nominated Gabe to fill in for vice chair, but Gabe had also already committed to be an alternate type for the CVRPC. So we're trying to figure out, if Gabe were to take on the vice chair role, what we're going to do with CVRPC. But we don't have Ari on here. We don't have a position filled. So we have some incomplete information about the CVRPC. Do you have any thoughts, Aaron, about that info download? He might not.
Is that like a complicated?
No, I just joined.
So. He's up for.
I just got on, so I don't know what's going on. Sorry.
Did you hear my?
I second that nomination, Aaron.
Yeah. Sure.
I would just say this is that as long as everyone knows that I think we need to get somebody into that CVRPC position. Mike was the alternate before, and he could go back into that, but I think we need somebody besides me in that role. So as long as we go into that knowing that, I'd be okay, serving Kirby.
Okay, and I'm fine with you and Mike holding on the fort for now, and then us readjusting that in the near term. Do we have, okay, so CVRPC thing, we're gonna just keep the status quo, which is officially Marcella's spot is vacant. Gabe's in there as the alternate, and we're gonna have to figure that out when more of the pieces come together. So I think that's what it sounds like we're gonna do with that. And we're not gonna vote on anything there. So let's drop that for now and return to the vice chair conversation. We have one nomination for Gabe. We haven't had any discussion of that. Are there any other possible nominations?
Can I second Gabe's nomination, just unofficially?
Thanks, John.
Yeah, I'm definitely keen on his what I think are his primary focuses, which are housing and other housing things.
Okay. Do we have any discussion of the nomination? We had a nomination, we had a second. Do we have any discussion of this? Okay. Is everyone ready to vote? Okay, well, let's do it. Let's vote. So those in favor of having Gabe fill the vice chair position, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, so it looks like that was a 5-0 vote for Gabe to fill in there. And we'll put the CVRPC thing on the agenda next time and revisit that. We'll have to see if Ariane has any interest. Might have to wait for the new person to see if they have any interest. It's usually the new people who are hazed into doing that. So we can see how it goes. Okay, with that, that just brings us to essentially the last thing on the agenda tonight, and we're 20 minutes in, which is to approve the letter regarding, that proposal about developers' reputation. I got a version of that from Mike. We all did this like 30 minutes before the meeting, and I did a quick like 10 or 15 minute edit session on that, and I sent that to everyone. I can share screen, but if you guys would take a look at my edits, one thing, Mike, hopefully that what I didn't overstep, and you're okay with me doing that.
So I have a separate substantive comment. In the email, Mike, that you had written, and we had more of the discussion about this when we were, talking about it a few meetings back. The idea of the proper place for this being enforcement of code. And so in your email, it was like the third to the last paragraph, you went through, what that process would look like. And that's the letter that's written is very legalistic. It's as if the only factor to consider is about whether something's lawful or not. But there's a policy, a good policy point that you make in that email that I think needs to be included in here, which is that the proper place for, discussing violations of code is by enforcing the code, right? And there should be a process to deal with that.
Yeah, and I think I was channeling a little bit of John in this one here when I wrote the other one with all of the kind of the straw man arguments, and then when I wrote the letter, I kind of pulled out a lot of those different pieces and kind of really summarized, because I sometimes a little bit saying less is a little bit better. So I kind of went through and just kind of summed that right up and said, well, what we agree to do is just do what we're doing, which is what we're already experienced in enforcement. We already know what we're doing in enforcement, and that's what we should be doing to address the concerns that these folks have.
Okay, yeah, I guess we can add more. It's just not quite as, it was a little, you had some examples and stuff, but yeah, I just don't, feel like that's buried because I missed it. In the worst case, where development takes place, violations occur, city staff will take appropriate action to enforce the city's zoning regulations. Maybe just break that into its own separate paragraph so it stands out or something.
And certainly this is your memo to, if you guys go back and say, hey, I want to grab that paragraph or grab those 3 sentences from your email and insert them in. This is your memo. I wrote a draft for you guys to work with.
Hey, Mike, are you going to attach Dave Ree's opinion to this letter?
No. He made his recommendation was not to put this council's opinion. He wants that. He says it comes legally, it puts us into a different position if somebody decides they're going to appeal or someone's going to go forward. He would rather that's why he wanted us to share that opinion in executive session, which we did. Yeah. And then if council wants to review the opinion, they should review that in executive session, because it really is intended for you and for the council.
Yeah, I was just more curious if the intent is to share Dave Rue's opinion with the city council directly, whether that probably an executive session or not. The question really is this going to be the universe that the city council reviews when they look at this issue, or are they also going to see Dave Rue's opinion letter?
Dave Rue's opinion will be made available to them. That was why I kind of put it in there, and I don't know between, we highly recommend you review the legal opinion of Mr. David Rue in executive session and direct any legal questions to him for clarification.
Right. Okay.
Because
that's helpful.
Because we're making our opinion, and that's why I kind of worded that. I don't know if that remained in.
Yeah, no, I see that.
Was just about, this is our opinion based on our experience, advice from the director, and review of the legal. Blah, blah,
so
blah.
if the thought is that they're probably going to look at Dave Rue's opinion separately as part of reviewing this issue, likely in executive session, my recommendation would be to pare this down as much as possible. I don't think we need to really articulate our thinking on what we think Dave Rue's opinion says, and sort of couch our thinking that way, because I think it's just basically twofold. One is to just say, look, we've got this, we got this opinion letter. We agree. We have a legal opinion from Dave Rue. We agree with it. There's a major case out there. Here's what it says. We don't have to contextualize that in this, in this instance here for them. They can look at Dave Rue's letter. And then, I think the other piece too is the policy piece that was discussed earlier, which is, we've got enforcement authority. If these issues come up, we'll enforce that way.
So let's apply this discussion to the letter. So right now on the screen I'm sharing, I think there's 4 sentences that summarize the Vermont Baptist Convention decision. I'm comfortable stating it there, just in case there aren't city councilors who read the legal opinion. So at least we've put a 4-sentence version of that there. But if you guys want to cut it down more, we can go that route. But right now it's about 4 sentences here. And then we move on to this Essex rule discussion, which is a slightly different thing. And I didn't touch that.
I think the Essex rule discussion is fine. I worry about putting in any analysis on the Vermont Baptist decision, because it frames up the letter in a way that sort of puts us out there as acting sort of as like counsel to that city council, which I don't think we should do. I think we should just refer them to look at Dave Rue's letter.
Okay, so this part that's highlighted on the screen now would be the description. I did rephrase it when I went in and worked on this, but it does restate and apply the holding from that case to this question, which is kind of what Aaron's saying. He wants us to basically avoid applying the law to anything, because that would be like legal advice. What are others' thoughts?
I just get a if you.
I mean, my thought, I was trying to keep out of that. I chose that one case because I think I'll give you a little bit of my thoughts as I was drafting it, was that I didn't want to go and start getting into a legal argument or citing cases, but this one case is a pretty clear case, and it's a pretty clear determination that says that we cannot use somebody's identity in the making of a decision. And so I felt rephrasing that, whether it's how I worded it or how you worded it, a little explanation of what that case said, I think is important.
Yeah, and I agree. I think the parenthetical that comes after the citation is fine and perfectly appropriate. It's the sort of the analysis behind it that starts with Kirby's analysis after it, and there's nothing wrong with the analysis. I worry that it puts us in a place that we don't want it to be if we're sort of giving our take on it, again, because we have a letter from council that spells this all out for them if they want to dig into it.
I agree.
And to the extent that there's any wording in Dave Rue's letter that is inconsistent with what we're putting out here on this letter, just avoid that issue altogether.
Yeah, he reviewed this, and he was comfortable with the area, what was struck out. He didn't review Kirby's comment, but he reviewed the part starting denying a permit to the Boves based upon who they are as an applicant, not based upon the merits of the application. The proposed development of or use of the property would clearly violate this basic tenet of zoning in the opinion of the Planning Commission.
But I agree. I mean, that was probably part of my impression, Mike, reading it. It was like I was reading a legal opinion. And I think just the idea of, that we are presented this and then recommend that you review that legal opinion yourself so you can, understand all the things that are associated there.
Yeah, and the reason why I also went into that was because of the next sentence. Part of their argument was that other agencies, Ms. Sherman's argument was that other agencies use, other agencies and departments within the state consider and in fact require an applicant's compliance history. And that's not true in zoning. And so that was why I wanted to kind of follow up with that piece, was just to go through and say this case is why. It's why we can't consider the Boves history. It's also why we're not like the state agencies and we're not like these other boards, because zoning is unique. It's got this prohibition. You can't do this.
I do like that that last sentence that was trying to, how do I frame the sentence that is struck right now that starts with this prohibition by the courts does not exist for some other types of regulations and boards.
I rephrase that as.
I see that. Yeah, other
context thing. But yeah, we could go with either one.
Yeah, I just worry that if we're sort of thinking out loud about what we think the courts might do, it just I just worry about that.
Yeah, and I'm saying this stuff not being an attorney who's trying to worry about sounding like I'm being an attorney, which is why when I phrased mine, I tried to end mine in the opinion of the Planning Commission. That was very intentional. I wanted to make sure it was in there that this is our opinion as the Planning Commission. Now, of course, I ignored the fact that a number of you are also attorneys, which kind of changes the dynamic for you guys. Providing opinions as a Planning Commission that are not legal opinions when you're attorneys. So I can see your pickle.
Yeah, I mean, I was comfortable with saying this, but I get Aaron's comment, and we don't have a lot to gain from redoing David Rue's analysis. So, what do you think about this, Aaron? We saying we agree with Mr. Rue's advice regarding the legal risks of considering an applicant's identity when considering an application, and then cutting this other stuff. Did you also?
Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense. So,
do you think we should include another sentence there relating to how this might be okay in other regulatory contexts, or leave it?
Yeah, I'm just trying. I think it is worth just planting a flag on that really quickly and just marking it for the reader.
Okay.
I think we can just say, we also note that, while consideration of an applicant's prior history might be relevant to issuing permits in other regulatory contexts, it's not the case with zoning. You can just that's in Dave Rue's analysis, I'm sure, and we can.
And you might make that another paragraph, the other regulatory contexts, and then drag up the "we advise you" piece again. That way we agree with Mr. Rue's advice, ends the other one. And then, down one paragraph.
I almost feel like we can
Put it here?
Yes.
I feel like we could plug that sentence into the front end of the paragraph that speaks to the Essex rule. I feel like they might be connected a little bit. Maybe not. I'm thinking out loud right now.
Oh, the advice of the legal opinion. Yeah.
No, just talking about how. No, that doesn't. Never mind. I take it back.
Yeah, I think the Essex rule is separate.
Yeah.
Is everyone okay with what's here now? I did do some caveats here where I said like our understanding and so forth, like where we're not making it as a factual claim. Everyone good? I can't tell if Aaron's like wordsmithing in his mind or if he's good.
No, I'm yeah, I'm fine. I just keep rereading the same 3 paragraphs or three same sentences over and over again.
Okay, so Essex rule I didn't touch. And then the last paragraph, I did touch a bit because it also, like what Gabe was saying before, occurred to me also that I feel like it was a compelling part of our discussion that we already review landlords for building code violations, and that's what this is trying to get at, but it's getting at it at a wrong part in the process, a wrong time in the process where we're preemptively. So I did try to rephrase a little bit, but we could go even farther to make that point clear. What do you think, Gabe?
No, I think it's good.
Do you have any thoughts, Mike, about the way it's stated here?
No, I think if you guys are comfortable with that, I'm comfortable with it. Whenever we're done, I'll send it back to David for some final, make sure he's okay with it, which I think we would be at. We haven't added anything. His big concern is whether we get into the legal, break into the legal cases.
Okay, just for readability, I'm going to accept all changes here. And let everyone take a look at this last part. I did add the bit in about the landlord, which goes to the building code distinction. Okay, we ready to vote on this?
What are we voting to do?
Voting to approve the letter as amended here. And then with the understanding that Mike will have David Rue review again to make sure that it's acceptable for him. And if it is, then to pass it on to the city council.
We need city
This
council
version.
meeting next week.
My understanding is city council has this on their tentative schedule. They've scheduled kind of things out through months. This actually isn't on their agenda until September, but we had already kind of started it before I thought they wanted it for the meeting coming up in next week, but it turns out that they have so much stuff on their schedule that it kind of got bumped down. And when I checked the weekly report, it looks like it's down in the September. But if we've got it early, we can get it off our plate and move it on and not let it get in the way of us when we're actually working.
Perfect.
So do we have a motion to approve the letter as amended here?
You do.
Okay, motion from Aaron. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Jeff. Any further discussion? Okay, those in favor of approving the letter for city council as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay. Letter approved 5-0. I'll email this. This says MPC edits, this version, Mike.
All right.
To you right now. And that's all we've got for tonight.
Yeah, I didn't have much else to put on there. Just as an update on the RFP for the web design consultant, that is due on the 17th. So it's due 4 days from now. So that's due this Friday. So we will have those in for Friday. So that will be on your next agenda. So we can review whatever proposals we get in for Friday. I'm expecting at least 2. So gone from 1 to 2, and then we'll review those at the next meeting and decide who we want to pick up.
What are the next areas of the plan that we're going to look at, so I can start just thinking about it a little bit?
I think we've reviewed all the ones that we have, all the ones that we'd finished prior. So the only chapters that were left, unless Kirby's gets the arts chapter going, is community services, and we do have to do the land use plan, so that'll be an interesting one. Public safety would be the third one. Emergency services. So however we want to capture that, the basically police, fire, dispatch, maybe some of the other ones. I'm having a senior moment on some of the other ones that fall into that category. So, but we'll get those going. So, but I've gotten a lot of the community services moving. So that would be the next big one that I would be able to get to you guys. But most of the other ones that I've written, you guys have reviewed. I might be able to get utilities and facilities. That's the other one that's basically done. I haven't reviewed it with the DPW staff because they're so busy. But I might be able to peel a little bit of time away from them to do a quick review of that, so we can review that one next.
All right.
So yeah, we don't have too many chapters left, really.
So there is some info in the community services, Gabe, if you wanted to get a head start looking at what that kind of looks like. I've noticed that there's nothing in public safety right now. I mean, you can look at the current plan to get an idea, because I gotta admit, I'm fuzzy about where public safety overlaps with planning.
Yeah, there's not. I mean, there are places, but there's not a lot. I mean, again, being a city plan, we're gonna capture a bunch of stuff that may not necessarily relate to, say, land use or zoning. A lot of the community facilities, senior center, cemetery, these are required elements to have in your town plan. So we discuss them in those contexts, but most of those are looking at goals and visions that are going to probably be implemented through policies, through potentially some projects or some programs, but there aren't going to be a lot of regulations that we'd be recommending for, say, public safety or the fire department or emergency services. But there may be a lot of projects for emergency services. Adding, I'll throw one example out. They've been wanting to, there's an outflow, they need to bury a pipe for the outflow from the sewer plant that runs up to the bridge. So that way they can outflow, they have to pump it upstream a little bit to outflow it there during the winter. So that way it melts, because it's warm water, it melts the ice and prevents ice jams. They've been doing that temporarily. They've been basically like hooking fire hoses up to run it up there. But DEC doesn't like that because of the potential of it leaking and all these other things. So, but they've gotten approval to bury a fixed pipe to be able to do that. That'd be a great emergency services, preventing ice jams by keeping an open flow channel. That's a project that's on their list for the fire department. So there are a number of these different projects. There have been a lot of communication stuff. If you watch the city council, a lot of stuff on public safety communications, and all of our changes that we need to have. We've got very old equipment, very, very old equipment. And so there's a lot of plans to upgrade that equipment, make it the same equipment as Berry City, make them interoperable. So that way, if, something happens to our facility, they can switch over. Berry City can take over all of the dispatch and vice versa. Right now we can't do that, or we kind of can do that, I guess my understanding is, but it's not as smooth as it would be if both facilities were operating on the same system and both had upgraded equipment. So, and there's plans to upgrade both the equipment. And so those are the things that we would probably capture in that public safety vision, goals, and strategies. What's their vision for making public safety, making things safe? What are the goals? Lay out those goals, and then lay out the strategies. And a lot of them are going to be these projects or policies that would probably make most of those, as opposed to a lot of what we talk about, the regulations and the zoning and the codes.
Is there, and there may be room to also talk about, in terms of any of the equipment we purchase, you hear a lot about fire chiefs want to get the biggest truck possible because it's a big fire truck. So that's really cool. But then we end up needing to design our streets for the fire truck and not the other way around. And sometimes the biggest fire truck possible is not conducive to the best urban design. So hopefully we can maybe get the fire chief excited about the nimblest fire truck possible, or something that allows for design of streets as narrow as possible that can still be accommodated by our public safety equipment.
It's a good thought.
Yeah, it certainly has been that reminds me, John's comment reminds me, in the past, there used to be a lot of comments about making sure that your building height of your buildings does not exceed the height of your firefighting equipment. Unless you have, elevated building codes, because if you don't have the building codes up to a certain level, then you risk having fires that can't be fought by the equipment that you have. So you basically set a height limit of 48 feet because that's the height that a tower truck could work a fire. But a lot of times that's less of an argument, because if you have the correct building codes and you have a fully sprinklered building and you have reliable water sources and everything, that's less of an issue. But that's other places where these discussions come in, where they could overlap with codes or they could overlap with zoning. But I haven't even started public safety. So these other ones have all been started in a vacuum in a bottle, but I haven't public safety, I haven't even started. And part of that had to do with the new police chief coming on board. There was a PRC, a police review committee that was looking at a number of things. They were implementing a number of other initiatives with the new chief. And so we really just wanted to we had other things we could work on. So we kind of left them to move forward on what they were trying to move forward on, let them get the new chief, get the new deputy chief, and get themselves settled, get through their review committee pieces, and then work ourselves back to getting to them after they're settled. So I do plan to get to them, but as I said, community services, utilities and facilities, and then land use are really the three primary ones I want to get through, because those are the three required chapters.
So Kirby, then are we just voting on the minutes from last time then?
Yeah. One last thing I was going to say, I mean, I don't know how relevant it will be, but it's an interesting thing to read about. There was the police review committee that put a report out last year. And that's an interesting report. You can pull it up online, and I'm not sure how much the content of that committee's report is going to overlap with zoning, but it's full of interesting ideas that were encouraged for changes and police stuff. So it's interesting. Yeah, we can move on to the minutes review if we don't have anything else that people are thinking about. Okay. So we have the minutes from May 23rd. We could take a look at those. Let me know when you're ready to move to approve them, or if there's any amendments. I wasn't there, so I don't know. It looks like you guys talked about some of the things I brought up in the comments from the chair, the solar access issue. So again, if anybody has notes about that, send them to me, please, because I do want to get started on the public outreach aspect of that.
They look good to me. I move that we approve the minutes.
Okay, we have a motion from Gabe to approve the minutes from May 23rd. Do we have a second?
A second.
Second from John. Those in favor of approving the minutes from May 23rd, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. Minutes are approved. That concludes the agenda. So I'm open to motion to adjourn. Don't be
Move to
shy.
adjourn, Kirby.
Motion from Gabe to adjourn. Do we have a second? From Vice Chair Lajeunesse? Lajeunesse. Okay. I'm from Tennessee, so I take no responsibility for how I say anything.
Very good.
Lajeunesse. Okay, so we have a motion from Gabe to adjourn. Do we have a second?
Again.
Second from John. All right. Those in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Hey!
Aye. All right. We'll see you guys in 2 weeks.
See ya.
Thanks a lot.